Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I know we have a couple people that are calling in, so if you're calling in on a phone, don't worry, we are recording this, so you'll be able to view it on a computer later on within about a couple of days or so. If you just go to events.bbcommunity.org, it's all posted on there in addition to previous webinars as well. If you do have a question, we will answer those as we go along or at the end. Just type them in the chat option or the Q&A, and we will answer those. My name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB. So we are holding webinars daily for all of our businesses and also the business community on a variety of topics just during the COVID-19. Just because it's affecting a lot of our businesses, and we want to give you the tools that you need to be successful at this time. So we have two great speakers here today to talk about productivity in the remote environment. First, we have Jeremy Macliver. He's a certified EOS implementer, father of 4, husband of 18 years, and is passionate about helping business owners get what they want from their business. He's also a serial entrepreneur and has led multiple companies through high growth phases in construction, automotive, and service industries. Under Jeremy's leadership, companies have doubled in size year after year, created strong cultures that attracted top talent and increased profitability, and won best places to work, and created apprentices programs to help youths interested in getting into trades. We also have Ryan Englin. Ryan has a perfect background to doing what he is doing. Most importantly, he has the results to prove it. He's worked in corporate America for over a decade and has learned how to attract top talent. He's repeatedly built top performing teams that would have been crushed by corporate reshuffles. Ryan has also set out to build his own dream team and start a digital marketing company. So please welcome both of our speakers today. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Faustine, and welcome everybody to this this webinar here. And as we kick this off, the 3 topics that we've talked about that we're going to be discussing today is engaging your team in crisis, creating clarity, accelerate results, and staying profitable from home. So right now in this time period, we're dealing with some different nuances as a business as we look at remote workplaces. And as we kick this off, I want to be mindful of the remote workplace is really not anything new. It's just something that we're all facing in a more prevalent manner right now. So Ryan and I have worked together, quite a few blue collar companies, trade-based construction companies, and they deal with remote work every single day. They got their employees out at job sites where they're disconnected from the office. Are they really working? Are they not? And they're out in maybe sometimes different states, whatever that may be. And so what I want to talk about today is our slogan is real, simple results. And so everything that we're going to talk about and teach today is real. And by real, what I mean is we've been teaching these tools for years, implementing them in companies of all different types, shapes, and sizes. And so we know that these work. They are simple, and that's where we do believe that we get the results. And by simplicity, I mean that they're easy to understand, they're easy to follow. They're not always easy to implement. So I want to make sure we understand the difference between simple and easy. And finally, what this whole entire webinar is about is results. And so with that, I do want to tee up a couple things that we want to be clear on this one. We are going to teach some tools today that will be downloadable on the BBB's website below this if you're watching this afterward or shortly after this gets posted. Also, if you'd like to email Ryan or I, it's perfectly fine. We can send you these tools. After we get done teaching these tools, we are going to spend the remainder of our time together solving any of your key issues that you're facing around this. So we work with different teams, helping them solve theirs, and we're happy to be live on this call working with you on those. So with that, I would like to pose out there right now, and you can just put this in the chat box. What is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now in creating a remote workforce? Just put that into the chat, and we will be capturing that as we go through this, and we will get to working through any of those for you particularly. So what is the biggest challenge you're facing right now as you face this remote workplace? Particularly, let's talk about it from, are we getting accountability, remaining profitable, sustainable, getting the results from our employees? What are those challenges that you're currently facing or would like to see some answers with? So with that, what I would like to jump into as you send those in, and Ryan will be capturing those, I want to move over to, let me move this thing, the next page here. I want to just talk really briefly about the model that I use to help teams get crystal clear on three things, and that's where they're going, we call that vision, and how they plan to get there. The second thing I want to talk about is traction, creating the accountability and discipline to execute that. And the third is creating a healthy, functioning, cohesive team. So that's a team that's really engaged. Every year at annual planning, I read a quote that says, if you could get all of the people in an organization rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry in any market at any time. I've been reading that to my teams in the last couple of weeks, and just reminding them that it does not matter what the market conditions are. We're all facing that. And it's time for us to execute and execute extremely well. And so this model here, we use to align it all. Today, I'm not going to dive into everything here. We're just going to talk about some specific tools around it. And we're particularly going to focus in the people section, the data component, and the traction component of those. But I wanted you just to see the model on it. So with that, let's jump right into the meat of this, and let's start talking about creating accountability and clarity. And so we use what we call an accountability chart, and it's just like an organizational chart. You've probably seen one of these 100 times. But where it's different than an organizational chart is we're going to talk about a couple different things that we need to do to create the clarity and the accountability. Today, I'm not going to spend all the time and dealing with how this whole entire thing is structured, but I really wanted to just jump into particularly the individual functions. So right now, as we work from home, we start looking at each position, and they're very isolated. They're distant, they're remote. And we go, okay, what do I need from them? Because let's be real, everybody's facing more distractions when they're at home than maybe even they would have when they were at home 3 months ago. Kids are at home right now. A lot of parents are having to teach, homeschool their kids, get their work done, coordinate a lot of nuances of their own personal lives. Spouses are home at the same time working from home. And so there's a lot of distractions going around there. And so what I want to talk about here is we need to get really clear on what each person is accountable for. Not what do they do. Too often we focus on what do they do. They push papers, so what? Why? Because we really need to connect into that why. So what is it that they do? What I'm going to encourage you to do is look at each one of your positions and say, okay, for this position, these are the 3 to 5 things that they're accountable for. And if you're listening and you're live right now, I would ask you if there's one of those positions you're like, I don't know what they're exactly accountable for. Put that position in. We will work to solve that for you. But what we want is them to be crystal clear on what they are accountable for, because there's a couple things that will happen when we do that. And the first is we as leaders will be able to lead them better. When we get crystal clear on this is what I need from them versus this is all the stuff that we used to do, this is what I need from them. I will, as a leader, begin to lead a lot stronger because I have clarity on what I'm trying to lead them to. But it also is going to go on their side, that they're also going to be able to participate a lot better because they're going to be able to know exactly what they're accountable for. What are they driving for? And I think that this is going to as we're all at home, we have more time to reflect on our lives, reflect on where we're at. They need to know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. It is more important now than ever before. They need to know exactly why am I doing what I'm doing and what am I accountable for. So if I'm clear on what I'm supposed to lead you on, you're clear, those are both great. But where the real magic's going to happen is we're going to be aligned. And I'm finding that once the team is aligned, and I know you know, we both know that each other know, that's where the magic starts happening. And we both are able to engage and just work on the critical stuff for us to be doing. Now, a lot of times when we start writing this, we want to write out 15 things, 30 things. I'm going to encourage you, 3 to 5, high level, what are they accountable for? Once we have that accountability clear and we know exactly what they're accountable for, I want to talk about the next thing, and that's scorecards. Too often, we as leaders are leading teams that really don't know what winning means. They're not crystal clear and they're not completely defined on what is that. What, at the end of the day, I've worked all day, what does winning look like? We all know that we could go out to the park right now, obviously from a distance, but we could go to the park and we could watch some guys playing basketball. And without a scoreboard or anything, we could tell if they were keeping score or not. If they were keeping score, their passes would be a lot tighter, a lot cleaner. They'd be moving faster. They wouldn't be stopping for water so much. They'd be really, really focused on what they're trying to do for their team to win. And so what I want to encourage us to do is to get really clear on what does winning look like for each position. Okay, so as we look at it, I am going to pull up the scorecard, and we'll get this going, and then we'll start looking at it from the employee side. So right now I'm coming strictly from the employer side, and then Ryan's going to bring it in from the employee side. So as we look at this scorecard, now it's very simple, and I'm going to encourage you to keep very simple. I've seen teams go and get fancy graphs, and they start getting cool little info deals. And a lot of times that just starts distracting the eye from getting crystal clear on getting exactly what we need. And so there's a couple elements that make a successful scorecard. We need to have somebody assigned to each number. That number needs to be clearly articulated, and they need to be able to control that. And then there needs to be a clearly defined goal. So if I'm working from home and I need to make 5 sales calls, it would say, Jeremy, number of sales calls, and the goal would be 5 or more. On week 1, if I did 3, we know we didn't meet the goal. If I did 7, I did. And from an employer's perspective, we're able to look at that position. We've gotten clear on what they're accountable for, and we know what we need from them. Now we just define, hey, are we going to make money based off of these results? And we're able to monitor them without being right in front of them. So if we got the 5 calls, or whatever that may be, we've got that. So with that, I want to bring Ryan in, and we're going to let him start sharing it from the employee side. What does it look like from their side?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to keep in mind when we're managing people that remotely in the field, especially people that aren't used to it. Right now, Jeremy had mentioned there are a lot of distractions. There are rules on where we're allowed to go, what we're allowed to do, how we're able to keep the kids busy, teaching the kids. There are more people at home than we're used to. And so as employers, as business leaders, we have to remember that our employees, they want help in being able to figure out what is it that is really critical to getting the results that you want them to get. So the accountability chart, when we're defining what they're accountable to, and the scorecard, when we're defining what winning looks like, remember that a lot of your employees are going to want this information from you. They're going to want to know, what is it that you're really looking for in this time of this changing climate and all the distractions they have. A lot of the people we talk to are telling us, well, I want to make sure my people are working enough. I want to make sure they're behind their computer enough or they're on the phone enough. And while that might be something that you can easily manage when they're in the office, it's a lot harder when they're at home. And they're balancing 100 things too. And the last thing we want to do is bury them with doing an activity enough that's not getting results. When we get really clear on what the results are, they can make better prioritization decisions, and they can figure out, okay, if I know that I've got to make those 5 sales calls, this is the time I'm going to carve out to make those 5 sales calls and get the result my boss is looking for every day. Versus, here are all the things that you normally do. I want you to do those things. And by the way, figure out how to balance it with the changing environment and all the distractions at home and everything else. So it really is recognizing and accepting the fact that this is different for them too. And they're feeling a lot of the same pressure that you are as their manager or as the business owner. And how do I get this done? How do I get the results? So the more that we can have that conversation and walk through it from their perspective, the more results they're going to get you and the more accountable they're going to be. And they'll be more likely to come to you and think, okay, you know what? My boss is willing to talk to me about this and they understand what I'm going through. So I'll be able to get the results they're looking for.
Absolutely. And as each team transfers from the office to the home, there's a lot of things that were easily accessible from the office or their normal environments that are no longer accessible. And so we're seeing teams where the process and some of the things are just breaking down. Let's get really clear on what does success look like so that we can continue to maintain that through all of this chaos. And some of it we might find when we come back to it, we didn't need maybe that extra little bit of whatever we were doing. But if we can get really, really clear as a team what we need to do, we will be able to drive those results. They will be able to focus on what they need to be able to focus on. So with that, I want to bring us to the next thing that we need to talk about, and that is the meeting pulse. So we all are feeling a lot more isolated right now, and the connectivity is extremely important. It's important year-round, all the time. But right now, as we all hunker down and we do what we're doing, the right pulse and the right way to connect is what we need to be talking about. And I do have a complete agenda that we normally teach, and if you want that, we're happy to give you that. We've researched a lot of meeting agendas out there, and we believe we have formulated one that is the simplest, the fastest, and the most productive. But I really want to talk about one aspect of the meeting pulse today, and that's how do we solve issues? Because this is where the rubber meets the road right now today as we're looking at this. And so I want to introduce an acronym that we use called IDS, which stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. And it comes from the observation that a lot of times great leadership teams would come together and they'd begin discussing an issue, and they discuss it, and they would walk out and say, wow, we talked about so many great things, but it was not really clear what got done. And so we really need to dig in and identify what is the root of this issue. And then we'll discuss that, and then we'll take a solve on that. And so just going back to the scorecard for a second and talking that through. If I meet with my remote team and they haven't made the calls that they need to make, we're going to dig into it. What's going on? What is at the root of that? Why are we not doing that? We're going to discuss those root issues. We're not really going to discuss the fact that you didn't hit the number, because it's pretty obvious we have that. We're going to dig in, and we're going to be able to help each one of our team's members to go to the next level and to actually solve their issue. Now, when we dig in and we identify that root cause and we discuss those, the solve is something needs to happen. And so we're going to take a to-do, an action item, and we're going to say, okay, Ryan, I need you to go do this. And next meeting we come back, we're going to read that and say, Ryan, you were going to do this. And he was going to tell me it's done or not done. Jeremy, I'm going to take this and I'm going to fix that little thing in the software so that you can get to it. I'm going to set up your Zoom account. I'm going to do whatever that is. And that allows us each and every time that we come together to engage productively and digging to the root cause of the issues. We've clearly defined what you're accountable for, what we need from you. We've defined in the scorecard what success looks like so that we know that we're monitoring and pushing for a profitable result. And then we're getting together and we're identifying those root causes that we're tackling those, we're discussing them, and we're solving them. If we just take these 3 simple principles right now and we work these for each team, we will be able to increase the clarity and the confidence that all of our employees need right now in this crisis so that they know that they're doing their job, they're managing their priorities, and that they also are able to focus on those other things that they should be focusing on in their lives. So with that, I want to talk about solving issues in a remote environment. And really what we're going to talk about here is your issues. We're happy to go through these and IDS them for you. So we'll dive in and we'll go from there. So with that, let's move over to the issues list. And with this, let's jump into issue number 1. Confirming they are working. If you can raise your hand, whose issue is this one? And Faustine, are you able to turn them on?
Yeah, I think
That
this one's
one-
from Gail. Gail, do you have a
Yeah.
microphone? If you do, you can raise your hand. We can allow you to talk.
So let's just jump into it. And confirming they're working, we'll try to solve it. Gail, if you want to just chat in, if you're having any, if you're not able to unmute. If you are, we'd love to have you join in. And so I would love to know a little bit more about this as we dig into the issue. Are we confirming that they're making the calls? Is it we're confirming that they're doing the results? Or is it confirming that they're plugging in for the 8 hours a day?
Well, I can share a conversation I just had with a business owner yesterday around this exact same topic, because they feel that there's not a lot of engagement from the team throughout the day. And I don't know, Gail, if that's what you were dealing with here, but they feel that it's very start and stop. They'll be available for a few minutes in the morning, then maybe a little bit around lunchtime, and then maybe afternoon. At the end of the day, they're like, what did you really accomplish today? And I'm not quite sure because you weren't available, you weren't responding to emails very quickly. Were you actually working or were you out doing other things? So does that make sense, Jeremy?
Absolutely. And so I'm reading into what Gail put out here, confirming that employees are in fact working the hours they are billing us for. And so unfortunately, when you can't see them, it can get a bit difficult, correct? And like I said, there's more distractions. At the office, we might have a coworker come up and tell us a story or show us a funny video or something like that. But at home, it's our kids. They're homeschooling right now because school is closed. There's all those distractions. And that's where we're coming from, the standpoint of getting really clear on what are the results that we need. And that's what we're after. If they can normally do those results in 8 hours, that's what we need to be solving for. You have anything else to add to that one, Ryan?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is a different environment. It's all unknown. And a lot of people that I've talked to have been very accustomed to being able to make 5 sales calls a day, for example. We're going to pick on the salesperson. And that was when they were in the office. So the conversation we may need to have with employees is that still a realistic number? Given everything that's going on, is 5 still realistic? Now, if they come back and they say, no, it's not, I can do 1. Well, now we need to have a conversation about productivity, engagement, some other things. But if they come back and they say, you know what, I don't think 5 is, but I could do 4, Well, have a coaching conversation with them around what it's going to take to get 4 done. So I think one of the things we need to do too is reset our expectations around what working looks like. Because at the end of the day, we should all be focused on results. Someone sitting behind a computer for 8 hours but not getting any results and not being able to bill your clients or billing your clients for work they didn't do, that's not what we're after. We're after the actual results they get when you do bill the client. So I think having that conversation with them and just making sure that they're bought into the scorecard numbers still, that they're still bought into what they're accountable to, is going to make those conversations way easier if they're not performing.
I hope that helped, Gail. Now let's move to number 2, building dynamic relationships. Linda, looks like this is yours.
Hi.
Hello.
This is really useful information. I appreciate it. I really concurred that it is looking at the results, not so much the hours and the process, but what are we accomplishing? And we can learn some key lessons that we can take with us back to our jobs when we do get back to normal. A lot of what I do in community outreach is based on just the characteristics of my personality and going out into the community and meeting with people, educating teams, getting buy-in from different stakeholders. Right now, because I need to be mindful that people are so distracted and there's so many things going on, I have to be very strategic in how I approach them. And it just takes different skill sets in showing up and having an in-person meeting.
Absolutely. No, we're definitely dealing with some different skill sets and stuff. So tell us a little bit more. Let's dig a little bit more. What you're normally meeting face to face, it sounds like, or are you normally meeting in group settings?
I do both. My job is to increase awareness about the importance of early childhood. And sometimes I'm meeting one-on-one with business leaders, with elected officials, with faith leaders, all different kinds of audiences. Sometimes I'm doing presentations in front of a group. It may be a Lions Club, it may be the Rotary, it may be some service organization, but a lot of my meetings are one-on-one in a person's office.
Okay. And you said the purpose, tell us that again, was with child.
Okay, so it's all about increasing awareness about early childhood development. Why quality early childhood education and health screenings are so important.
Okay.
And what's the big challenge right now? I know there's different skill sets, and I'm sure being able to schedule the meetings is taking on a whole different dynamic, but what's the biggest challenge you're having around these presentations now?
Part of it has to do with the bandwidth and with cell reception because I cover a large rural area. There are places I serve where community members would go into their library and plug in their devices to charge because they don't even have electricity at home. They certainly don't have internet at home. There are places I can't call because they have very spotty cell phone and that's the only phone they have. The tech doesn't solve the problem in a lot of places for me.
Yeah, and that one's obviously going to be a bit of a challenge right now. So are you covering all of Arizona, Western?
Yavapai County.
Yavapai County. Okay, so up north. Then the northern part, yep. So it's really getting access to these people. That's at the root cause of the issue. Right now, the access is broken because you can't see them face to face, and tech is broken because they don't have it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that is part of it. But even for those that I can reach, there's some that I'm going through old email lists and I'm sending emails saying, hey, can we just have a phone call or can we do an email chat? Whatever will work for them. They don't quite capture the vision, the enthusiasm that they would if I was present with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask, so given that this has been the last couple of weeks, what do you think is causing that lack of enthusiasm?
I think right now there is so much uncertainty in the world in general. And of course, people are distracted. Usually when I'm meeting with someone, whether it be in a coffee shop or in their office or whatever quasi-professional setting we're in, they're not also attending to their children. They're not also worrying about, am I going to get sick? They're not also worrying about my spouse or partner just lost their job. There's so many other things competing for their attention that they don't find my information as relevant as they would have 2 weeks ago.
Mm. Almost like jumping to number 7 on the issues list here.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So almost like bleeding into what Marilyn asked about. And one of the things that I'm hearing in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a timeliness component to what you're presenting and what you need to communicate with them. I mean, early childhood development, they're only in early childhood for so long. Is that right?
There is some of that. However, a lot of what I do, as I'm talking about the importance of what happens with kids birth to 5, I'm talking to business leaders who may not see in the beginning, well, yeah, that's important, that's good, but what's that have to do with me? I don't even have kids. So we're trying to get policymakers and others to see that everyone has a role in supporting early childhood and how it is workforce development and what the context is for the whole community when people, whether they have young kids or not, are recognizing we all have a role and can take certain actions.
So the fact that you've gone from a 3D environment where you're seeing them face to face to this 2D environment, that connection, that the things that are communicating between what you're saying, that's being lost. Did I hear that right?
Correct. And sometimes it's as simple as me asking them to go to firstThingsFirst.org and click on a website and, you know, look at some of the videos and things we have. Many people are getting bombarded with so many requests to read some digital information that they're just on overload.
Sure.
So Linda, there's one issue that's kind of underlying in this that I actually think all of our businesses are going to face that you're currently hitting. And that is our message and our purpose has got to be more clear than it ever had to be before. Because we have you're exactly right. We are all getting blasted right now with read this content, watch this thing, do blah, 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 right? And so what I would really ask right now is who has access or who right now gets your message the most that you could build the relationships with?
Right. And those are the folks we call our supporters and champions. And a lot of my job is to reach a diverse group of people from all different audiences and get them to take the message where they're the trusted voices in their little subgroups throughout. Because who gets listened to in Ash Fork is different from Prescott, which is different from Verde Valley, which is different from, you know, Mayor.
Absolutely.
So I need to be able to have touch point relationships throughout all of these little communities and then have them helping share those messages.
Do you have solid touch points in all of those different communities?
Some more than others.
So the ones that you have you're solid. You're doing good. You're able to get your message out still right now and just strengthening those, right?
Correct.
And so it's the communities that you don't have it that we really need to focus on.
Right. I have kind of my little posse of folks that we've had relationships. We would, you know, go to breakfast once a month or whatever. And those are great. But it's how do I expand to other priority audiences that I don't have that relationship with?
Do you have a relationship in every town?
No.
Okay. So some of those towns you don't. So the other question I have, and this is where some of our teams have had to come to grips with some of these things, is obviously we're in this crisis. It looks like we have maybe another month to 6 weeks. It all depends on. Is this something that right now we need to build that relationship, or is this something we just need to strengthen our current ones and we need to build an infrastructure for as soon as we're back to the real world?
Yeah. Well, for this week in particular, a lot of what we're doing is making resource lists and doing initial phone contacts with every food bank, every social service agency, and getting their current information, not what they usually do, but what they're doing under these unique circumstances, and having kind of a one-stop list and being able to provide those out to folks so that there's less uncertainty for them. And in the process of doing those lists, I'm making new relationships with the people that I'm speaking with and with the people we're getting those out to, saying, hey, first things first really is committed to strengthening communities, to strengthening families. So we're finding, while there are some real barriers, there's also new opportunities that we didn't have before.
Absolutely, definitely those. So what have you defined exactly what you and those on your team are all accountable for, and gotten clear on those like, hey, this is the metrics that we need to be pushing right now?
Yeah, we have pretty clear benchmarks.
So you're aligned on that. You know those numbers. Now it's just that how do we actually do this during this time?
Yes.
Okay. You know, and trying to solve all the world's problems. I don't want to. That almost sounded. I apologize. That almost sounded wrong there. But I want to make sure that for the call that we keep it moving. As far as digging in, I would exactly where you're going with this is where I would go with my team. I would really dig into identifying where are all of our opportunities right now. We know that we have some restrictions. Where are all of our opportunities right now? Where are our weak spots? And let's discuss each one of those as a team. And let's find a person, something that can leverage into that. And let's go out and we'll hit those for 2-3 days or a week, whatever we've agreed to. And then let's come back and let's dig in again. Where can we go? And that's how we're going to have to, you know, that's how I would be recommended to take it.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you so much there. Employees sleeping during the day. Sounds fun. Who put this one out there?
I think part of this already goes back to, this came from the BBB here. So I think this goes back to, are they working? Are they taking naps during the day? Are they in front of their computer, on their phone, doing the paperwork? I think that this very much goes back to that and focusing on what are the results that we're really looking for. In this environment, I feel that if someone needs to take a nap midday, but they're getting the results that we agreed on, they're getting the results. And so it almost feels a little bit like it's a build on of that first one.
So it looks like we're getting some comments right here on it that we could use Rosie or Rachel as the name for this one, with a smiley face. I think that was the joke. So, but yes, employees sleeping during the day. Obviously, it's harder to see what they're doing when they're not there, and that's why we are really leaning hard on getting clear on what does success look like for them. Some might work a little bit later in the evening, you know, and they also might be dealing with their kids got to do some schooling, or they got to do their lunch now, and all those kinds of things. Did we cover that? I got a yes. All right.
I think we did. And we already did this next one as well.
Low bandwidth in rural areas, that one's solved?
I think we did. One thing I did want to add to that is, Linda, I think you had mentioned it. There are community centers, there are libraries, there are areas that even though we're not supposed to be gathering a lot, that people could use them as a resource. Maybe we can create some videos or create some information to leave there that they can go and get as the community if they don't have access to the technology. That was the only thing I wanted to add to that. So the next one, communicating virtually. I think we talked about this being different skill sets and really being able to get the message across, keep people engaged, keep their motivation high. As Jeremy had said, I think I get no less than 30 or 40 communications a day just on this one topic of what we're dealing with. And 99% of them are of zero value because it's just companies looking to sell me more. So I'm starting to tune out. And I'm talking to people now that are starting to tune out to all of the news blasting us and all the information that's changing so fast. And so I think one of the things that comes up with communicating virtually is recognizing that people are overwhelmed right now, recognizing that they are being communicated with so frequently, so fast, with so much information that they're almost struggling with even how to process it. So this came from Rosie, and something that she said was, employees seem to not like video as much, especially if they're not accustomed to it. So as we get into rural areas where they don't have as high a bandwidth, they might not be used to video chat as much. And I think it's really just being able to take a step back and say, okay, let's put myself in their shoes. And let me see it from their perspective. So I don't know if we can dig into this a little bit, Jeremy, but I think that there's a lot of mindset. There's so many changes right now. And I don't know if you guys know this, but most people don't like change, especially the change where they have no control. So there's a lot of change that we're being forced on people right now. And we just need to make sure that we're walking that change, we're walking that path with them, and knowing that you're not asking them to communicate virtually. You're not forcing them to do this because you don't like them. It's just the circumstance under which we're all in together. And if there's a way that we can pretty much hold hands and say, okay, we're going to learn how to communicate virtually together, we're going to learn how to engage virtually together, then let's do that. From a leader's perspective, it might be being a little vulnerable. If you're really accustomed to being on video and you're okay talking to the camera, but your team isn't, this might be an opportunity to say, hey, I remember when I was there. I remember when I didn't like doing video, and here's what I did to overcome it. So let's work through it together. But just to be clear, this is not a kumbaya session. We're not just going to sit here and hold hands and hug and hang out together. We still want to push for results, but we want to understand that what our team is going through right now is really unprecedented. It is for all of us, but especially for our team. They're not used to this. They're not accustomed to it. So there's an element of coaching and mentoring that we're going to have to do as leaders to help our team get accustomed to these changes.
And the other thing I want to talk about was communicating virtually. And so I don't know if this is, I'm just going to take it from a different angle, not the change angle, but now that we're unplugged, there's a lot more email back and forth. And it starts exposing some of those breakdowns that we had in our processes and our way of communicating in the past. Prior to COVID-19, I've talked to my leaders for quite some time about those got-a-minute meetings. We all get those. Hey, you got a minute? And they go on for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And when we get back to whatever we were doing, and then somebody else walks in and goes, hey, you got a minute? And we can do that. And then by the time we get to the end of the day, we're like, man, I worked all day, but what did I do? I'm lost. Man, I didn't feel like I got anything done. And so what I'm going to encourage the team to do is, if we're struggling in that got a minute thing where we're going back and forth all the time, to create a list. Just create a spot. Maybe it's a Google sheet. It's somewhere that they can put all of their issues up there and know that every morning we're going to come together and we're going to solve those. And you'll find that a lot of the issues can be put into one spot and everybody can focus on solving them during that time, and then they can spend the rest of the day getting everything that they need to get done. Only the pertinent things that are time sensitive right now, hair on fire type situations, need to be solved in the moment. And you'll find that it'll free up a ton of time and we can be a lot more effective. And we're getting from Nicole just put in that they're using WhatsApp for different teams and the whole company teams for immediate conversations. Those are extremely effective. Seeing teams use WhatsApp, Slack. There's a couple other of those that are out there, but using those to stay in contact, absolutely, they're faster. They don't get your inbox clean, all messed up, and we get we can get a lot faster there. So great. Are there anything else on communicating virtually? I'd love to get any feedback on those. If not, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, I think this will jump into number 6 a little bit too, because number 6 is about keeping employees up to date on all the changes. And as we've talked about, there are a lot of changes right now. There's a lot of communication, but particularly office changes, introducing new technology is great. Like if you walk out of here and you go, hey, let's go check out WhatsApp and let's roll it out for my team. It's another change that you need to communicate. And I think Jeremy had mentioned it earlier about communicating virtually is what's really important to communicate in the moment, and then what can wait until later on in the week. He had talked about the meeting pulse and being consistent around the meetings and having very structured, objective meetings where the point of the meeting is to solve issues and make sure that people are leaving with a clear message and it's consistent for the team. I think that's one of the most effective ways you could keep people up to date on what's going on in the office. But I think the biggest thing as leaders, what we can do is we can say what's really critical to communicate today and what can wait. And then once we figure that out, we can figure out what's the right way to communicate that. The thing about WhatsApp or other messaging systems is if it's something that they need to remember over the next couple of weeks, things can get lost real quickly in those chat messages. But if we just need to communicate something real quickly, like, hey, we're having the meeting in 15 minutes, if the message is timely and it will expire sometime in the future, those are great ways to communicate that office information.
Yeah, and so I want to talk about three things that need to be underlying right now in all of our messaging to our employees. As a leadership team or as leaders, there's 3 things that we really need to make sure our message communicates. And the first is vulnerability. We're in a time right now, and I use this all the time, even when we're in the good times, but the vulnerability is that none of us are invincible. We're not completely sure about the future. We're not completely, we are all striving in this together. We're all stumbling through this together. I need your help. So the first thing is vulnerability, because if they see that we're vulnerable, they'll be able to come to us and to help us, and we'll be able to go to them. They'll be more open to being vulnerable. The second thing is the leadership team needs to be extremely united. And by this, it's really important that we as a team and all of this chaos communicate the exact same thing. A crack at the top, a crack in the leadership team is a canyon at the bottom. And so if Ryan and I are saying different things to our prospective teams, and then they are corresponding together and they're getting different conflicting messages. Maybe I'm really rah, upbeat, it's all going to be good. And Ryan is like, hey, we hope it's going to be good, but, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to get a clash of messaging out there that's going to start causing the morale to drop. It's going to start causing tension to come into it. And they're going to quit believing one of us, both of us, or something of those sorts. So vulnerable is one, united's second, and the last one is a confidence. So while we're vulnerable and we're not perfect, we don't have all the answers, we are confident that we as a team can get through this. We will survive. We are secure. Because each one of us, I was talking to one leader just the other day, and his wife was spending a ton of time on the phone surfing the news. And the leader was okay, but the wife was starting to get worked up. And so while they're at home, it begins to get more and more worked up about these issues. And so now is the company okay? What's going on? Are they just giving you a line to push through this? And so we got to remember there's a lot of conflicting messages out there. Our employees are struggling. Maybe they're not struggling financially yet. Maybe they are, but they are struggling with the news. They are scared. So are we. We need to be vulnerable about it, but we also need to be confident that we are going to get through it. So vulnerable, united, and confident are the 3 takeaways that they need. Are there any other questions around keeping employees up to date on changes? If so, put them in the chat. Let's move to motivation and staying positive. I believe this one was
That's Marilyn.
Marilyn, let's dig into this.
I
Hey,
was just saying that that's a tough thing in this time, during this time, is staying motivated and staying positive. And I was just curious if you had any suggestions for how we can do that and how we can do that with our teams.
yeah, so a question that a lot of I was asking a lot of my teams, and they've been asking their teams, is and it's in the preference that we're obviously going to be in a different cycle for a little while. Business as usual is different. So a lot of my teams have been asking, what do we need to do right now that when we look back at this time from a business perspective, we say, this was the amazing result that we got out of it. This made it, we were able to accomplish something that we were not able to accomplish before. I just talked to a team this morning that has been working on documenting their processes for a long time. In this downtime, they were able to focus and find something else. And they were actually like, hey, we got it all documented. We're streamlined, we're training, we're ready to go, so that whenever the day is that we're back to business as usual, they're prepared. And so I think motivation and staying positive is getting really clear on, where are we going right now as a team? What can we do? What are the silver linings to this cloud? And what can we do to initiate those actions at this time? Does that help, or is there something else?
No, that really does help. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to talk about motivating or staying positive? I'm going to jump into a couple other little team builder things that we can do to kind of keep the team engaged, because that's more on the staying positive. Jump on a call with everybody. When you jump on the call to do your productive meeting, and it's all, we're doing that work part. We are missing some of those stories that would just happen as we all walked in the office in the morning, like, hey, my son just won the game last night or whatever. Like, those things are being missed. So I would encourage you to start off the meeting with personal and professional good news. A lot of teams have things that are going on right now. I spend more time with my kids. I got to whatever. Those are a fun one. Another fun one that's been is, as we get on the video chat, everybody brings their pet. It shows everybody their pet. It's a fun thing. You get to see that. Normally we don't get to see everybody's animals. We only get to see the picture. Or I know teams have brought their kids and said, hey, I'm gonna introduce you to all my kids. So everybody brings all their kids around and like, hey, these are my kids. Hey, and everybody gets to bond that way. And then I know one particular team, they decided, hey, we've never been to each other's houses. And so at each break in their meeting, they would take each other on a tour of, this is my house and this is where I live. And so they got to bond in a different way. They got to connect and they got to unite. Let's remember, some of the most united teams that we've ever seen in history have been military teams. And they are facing some of the worst battles. They're facing real life and death situations. And somehow they're able to connect and create a camaraderie and a motivation and a unity that's extremely impactful and extremely important. And so we just need to think about it from that perspective. We as a team are bonding, we're uniting, we're going to get through this together. All right. We are at the 11:56 here. Let's just jump into concluding this thing. And Linda, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one if we want to dig into any of that deeper. And for any of you, I'm also happy to do that. I'm happy to spend a half an hour with you on the phone, digging into your situation and seeing if we can't be of assistance. So with that, a couple different things if you would like. We can give you a free copy of the ebook, Decide. It is a book that helps teams to really dig into what we just talked about with IDS. How do we make decisions? How do we keep a team moving forward? Whether it's good times, bad times. It's an ebook. I'm happy to give it to you. Also, we have an organizational checkup that you can look at. How aligned is our team? Where are we at with that? I spoke briefly about the level 10 meeting agenda. We call it a level 10 because we believe that everybody in the meeting should rate it at a 10. They should have got enough value out of it that they're excited and thankful that they were at that meeting. And like I just mentioned there, I'm happy to do free 30 minutes with each of you to help you solve any of your issues as we work through this together as a community. So with that, I will turn it over to Faustine.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy, Ryan. Very useful information. If anybody has any last minute questions for either one of these speakers, you can go ahead and type them in the chat option or the Q&A, we can answer those. This webinar was recorded, so if you miss the first half, it will be available for you online at events.bbcommunity.org. And we'll just give everyone maybe like a minute and see if there's any last minute questions that popped up. Lots of good comments though, but looks like we don't have any questions. But thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to both Jeremy and Ryan for speaking and educating us today. Hopefully it was beneficial for everybody and very useful. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, thank you for attending and please be safe out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.